Welcome to your in-depth weekly astrology overview and zodiac forecast for week commencing the 16th of December. I'm going to share some standout details to look out for to begin with, then on screen the event chart right at the start of the week. The planetary positions give us an idea of the background energy that will play out over the whole 7 days. Then, as influences come in, I'll go through each of them frame by frame to give you a clear picture of what you can expect from an overall perspective, but for the ascendant, sun or the moon for each of the 12 signs. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. Thank you very much for joining me. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. This is very much a community. If you've yet to subscribe, please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button. But also, if you could like or share the video, that would be cool too. I'm a consultant astrologer. If you'd like to check out what other people have found working with me and would like to have a one-to-one with me, please see my testimonials below. If you'd like to take advantage of my special package for your year ahead personal transit forecast, if you order that, you'll also get 30% off but your life roadmap report, but my free gift of your Zodiac general, love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast. But the personal forecasts are totally unique for each person they're produced for, and will help you to time your moves over the next 12 months in as accurate as a way possible. But the life roadmap report is really seriously important. That helps us to understand the patterns that are played out in our lives and gain a much more intimate understanding of why things have been as they are. But also, if you'd like to order from a whole sign perspective, you can. If you don't know your time from a solar perspective, or if you're interested in a karmic, spiritual dimension, you can order the draconic option. Please see the link below for more. Also, if you've yet to watch your in-depth year 2025 deep dive for each of the 12 signs, please click on the link beneath this video. Now, this week begins with the energy of last week's full moon still permeating through the heavens in a very potent way. And I feel there's some mystery in the air, to be honest, but perhaps also the potential for fact to be stranger than fiction. I will go through all of that and explain why. Now, we do have one of astrology's luckiest links this week between the two planets of fortune, Jupiter the Greater and Venus the Lesser Benefics, which peaks on Saturday towards the end of the week. Now, I'm going to explain to you that there is an opportunity there, but it is one that needs to be used in the right kind of way. But also, as the week draws to a close, we have the Winter Solstice in the sign of Capricorn, and that also ushers in Cardinal Quadrant 4. What does that mean? Well, Western tropical astrology is predicated on the seasons and begins with the spring equinox. So this is the last of the 13-week period. This backdrop is asking us to think very much about the physical domain. So very much about where we live, the type of work we have, our connection to the world at large, and where we may want to orientate our goals through to the spring equinox. But as the week draws to a close and that event occurs, so the equinox does T-square the Nodal Axis. So I need to explain that to you as well. But on the screen now, I'm showing the event chart. Now, as ever, we need to be mindful of the position of the sun. So you can see the sun is up there in Sagittarius for that one last set of 6 days before moving on Saturday into Capricorn. But it is in a quincunx with Uranus. A quincunx is a 150 degree, so you can see the sun's at 24:30 and Uranus at 24:06. So that suggests that if we're tempted to be too spontaneous with our resources, we might actually regret it. So if you have committed to a budget for your Christmas gift buying, I think it's probably saying to you, try not to be too impulsive, because that could tempt us. But the moon is domiciled back in the sign it rules of Cancer, which is really sweet, asking us as we go into this week to stay in touch with how we feel about things. But that moon position, ironically, is in a T-square with the nodal axis that I told you about, that would be very influential at the end of the week. So whatever we feel we need in terms of the North Node, which is our kind of instinctive direction of travel and very much to do with individuality, the moon's just saying, just be conscious of keeping things to a degree safe and secure and stable. But you can see that Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius, where the Sun is, continues its retrograde. That's going to go on until the very beginning of February next year. And Jupiter is in a square with Saturn. Now that square has been tightening up slowly but surely and is going to reach a peak on Christmas Eve. So as much as the full moon at the end of last week did see Mercury, the ruler of the sign of Gemini, where the full moon occurred, go direct, and on the face of it give us a sense that things can get clarified, and indeed Mercury starts this week in an excellent link still with Mars. So if we're very clear about an idea that we're passionate about, or a creative strand, we can certainly, despite Mars's own retrograde, punch it across with enthusiasm and vigour. But that square between Jupiter and Saturn is asking us to moderate our thinking, Jupiter in Gemini, with the emotional reality. And because Neptune, you can see, at 27 degrees, still in that square with the Sun at the start of this week, can create a sense of unreality. So as the Sun moves forwards this week and the square with Neptune tightens up, it becomes exact on Wednesday, the energy from the full moon is really reaching a peak in a way. That full moon in some guise, I think, is asking us to be very, very conscious of what we say, because Gemini energy is quick energy. Sagittarius energy can be very proud, but it can also be very loud. So it can be very confident, but if there is someone around us we're not sure of, this is not the best of weeks to be too open, particularly about confidential information, because I feel that if someone is being a little bit dishonest or disloyal or gossipy, it could take on that energy, a life force of its own, if we feed it. So if there's something going on around you that makes you feel unsettled, perhaps even angry, but you're not quite sure of the factual element of it, I wouldn't respond. Don't give it any oxygen. Now, as the week goes on and Venus and Jupiter, the two planets of fortune, reach a peak of their trine, also on Saturday when the Winter Solstice occurs, that can create some fortune. But someone asked me why other astrologers were saying, look, this can be a sensational time for good fortune. Why aren't you saying that? Well, I did mention that it can be helpful, but Jupiter is in retrograde, but it's also in a sign it's detrimented in, but it's also squared by Saturn, the greater malefic. And also, Venus in Aquarius is not so much about money, it's more about higher values. So what we might want to do with that Venus-Jupiter trine is really enjoy a person we can connect to who actually gives us a sense of uplift, because they're not feeding the gossip, the distortion that can go on this week. So I think the fortune comes from counting our blessings about the people in our world that communications can flow with in a really lovely way. But if you are someone who does like to have a little bit of a flutter, well, Perhaps you will have some serendipity. I'm not saying you won't, but I'm just qualifying why I have a slightly different view. But as I mentioned before, Saturday sees the winter solstice. It's an incredibly important event in astrology. If you're lucky enough to have any planetary positions right at the start of Capricorn, it can supercharge you. But just be aware that the North Node in the sign of Aries is about our collective direction of travel, urging us, because we've been having an eclipse series in Aries, to get in touch with what makes us unique and individual. The sign of Capricorn is very much about what's expected, what's accepted in terms of convention. So those conventional vibes are competing with another part of our consciousness, which is encouraging us to do our own thing. So not a massive issue perhaps, but just one I'm sharing with you so you have a fuller understanding. So the big picture this week is that with the planet of expansion in retrograde, in detriment, challenged by Saturn, we just need to be aware of why we say things, our deeper motivations. That Piscean energy is the emotional and spiritual culmination of the Zodiac, and Neptune can distort, and it can lead to the dark arts, it can lead to gossip, smearing, and all that kind of stuff. So if you are having conversations, whether it's around a contract, whether it's around a travel plan, whether it's around a job, or you're having a review at work, just be aware of what may have been hinted, the innuendos that may have been introduced that could be shaping someone's perception. So the best way to deal with that is by keeping it very to the point, factual, but not getting involved in the drama, because that will just exaggerate the problem. And as I mentioned, it could take on a life force of its own. And that's why the sun moving into Capricorn in a way provides some sanctuary. It's asking us, if we're not sure about something, perhaps go back to convention, go back to the routine way that things have been done, even if we just take a breath and a pause as the week draws to a close, because that will give us a greater sense of security. Please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces, but do check out your year 2025 deep dive video forecast by clicking on the link beneath this one. So Aries, your week commencing the 16th of December forecast begins with your ruler Mars still in retrograde, but continuing to forge a tremendously vibrant link to Mercury. The difference is that Mercury is now uninhibited by the retrograde. So Mercury's in that part of your chart along with the Sun, which is very much about being adventurous. So you could find yourself thinking a lot about travel plans or how you can open up your world in some kind of exciting way. Mars's retrograde doesn't blight that as such, because I feel the combination between Mars and Mercury is so potent. And also the North Node in your sign is forging such a brilliant angle to the position of Pluto in your direction of long-term planning. That too can give you the instincts and just the nous to tune in for what's right for you. It's just the energy of that full moon. Because as much as you may want to widen your world and be more dynamic in your approach, if there is something that's just permeating in the back of your mind, it may be some doubts, it may be a little bit of lack of self-belief, it may be some anxiety, maybe it's to do with how sincere someone is being. But you know, if that is the case, I wouldn't really be surprised, because since 2012, as much as you've heightened your perception and understanding of your inner world and things to do with healing, it's possible that there have been some profound disappointments. And those disappointments may, at some level, still be within you. For some people, the betrayal could have been almost haunting. So the square between the Sun and Neptune at the heart of this week is something you could feel particularly aware of. But what it can also do is provoke your imagination, and you could find yourself bringing up memories from the past and revisiting them with your lens of knowledge now. And the important thing is, if you do that, which could be a very healing process, is that you're not too hard on yourself about that past. You're not the person you are now as you were then. You've gained a lot of knowledge and experience. But if you are needing to work with people or be around people where you don't really feel that they're quite as upfront and honest as they could be, I definitely think you should keep your guard up just that little bit. But if you are attending a festive party towards the end of this week, the delicious link between Venus and Jupiter, despite the fact that Jupiter is in retrograde and in a sign it's detrimented in, could still see some bubbly interaction, and perhaps there could be a connection with someone that you really like. But the other big picture, along with Neptune being in your 12th house since 2012, was undoubtedly Pluto being in your 10th house since 2008. The 10th house very much to do with your work. If you've gone through some big alterations over that time, again, it wouldn't be a surprise. But Pluto, of course, has gone now. It's in Aquarius for the long term. But because of the winter solstice, that's going to evoke some feelings, I feel, around what you're doing. If you're really settled and happy and fulfilled in your life role, this is going to be an opportunity to springboard forwards over the following 13 weeks, round at the time when the Sun enters your sign, to really get even busier, cementing in the success that you've gained. But if you have been going through a big transition and you do need to reset, this can be a seminal moment, particularly because of the T-square to the Nodal Axis. So you may find yourself pausing and thinking, am I on the right track? And that's where I feel having Venus, but particularly Pluto in your 11th house, is asking you to keep the lines of communication open, but to people you do feel you can relate to. So if there have been huge changes around work and you feel that another change is required, I think one of the guiding principles for you should be to be with people that are comfortable to be around, that perhaps share your values. You know, whether it's talking about football, whether it's talking about philosophy, you do need to have a little bit of kinship. It's not just having the job, the status or the money alone probably won't be enough for you now. There's something more that you're needing, a greater sense of purpose. And that really is perhaps what the story of this week is about. Don't doubt yourself, but you have a chance to expand, you have a chance to book some travel, you could go off and have a wonderful time, but just be aware that your subconscious, your psychological side is really turned up to max this week, and it is going to be important to be tuned into it. Have a great week, Aries, and please do check out your year 2025 personal forecast and get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast. So Taurus, your week commencing the 16th of December forecast begins with you still trying to figure out perhaps that financial matter, particularly if the information that you were using has proved to be, or does prove to be this week, a little bit unreliable. It may be that someone's told you something that isn't actually correct. And although Mercury went direct as last week came to a close in your sector of shared resources and longer term financial management, the fact that Neptune is still applying to the Sun in that area, and Neptune's in the part of your chart to do with idealism, this is certainly not the week to be too optimistic, particularly if you are working closely with someone else or perhaps a group of people. Ironically, your ruler Venus, right at the top of your chart now, does angle brilliantly to Jupiter, the planet of fortune, as this week draws to a close. So it doesn't follow that this week can't give you a reward. You can't have a breakthrough, because by the time the sun moves on Saturday into your sister Earth sign of Capricorn, that could bring with it a moment of truth, but also breakthrough and success. So the key this week is to use that part of your nature that can take your time to work your way through information, sift through things, be very discriminating in your approach. The fact that Mercury, the planet of communication, is going forwards now will help you. It starts this week in a supercharged angle to Mars. It could be that someone close to you can actually bring a different perspective, perhaps a more emotional but very honest, pointed and perceptive slant to whatever it is you're thinking about. Now, if your big dilemma is around a relationship, the 8th house can be where we're most invested, most devoted, most committed. But if, because Neptune is bringing that shimmering energy to the part of your situation to do with your highest hopes, if it's a person that you're wanting to have that really good alliance with, but they're proven to be elusive, unavailable, or not very clear about what they want from you, that too can provide some uncertainty. But I think by the end of this week, your determination to crystallize a greater sense of clarity in your situation can definitely be a big feature. And in fact, from the end of this week through the next 13 weeks, if you do need to break free of something that's no longer working for you, whether it is around a business, whether it is around an investment, whether it is around a close relationship, whether it is around a job, you're going to have the opportunity with that particular event, that winter solstice, that's going to prime you up to have the confidence to be more daring as you end this year. And please do check out your year 2025 personal forecast and get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast. So Gemini, your week commencing the 16th of December forecast begins with Mercury, the planet of communication, and your ruler now travelling direct. But it won't come out of the post-retrograde shadow until the 3rd of January. And the potential for crosswires and confusion around relationships, which has been so strong over the last few weeks, is not diminished, because the Sun, also like Mercury in your sector of relating, is in a very blurry right angle with Neptune, the planet of dreams, but also potentially of distortion, right at the heart of this week. If you're wanting to talk to a boss or a potential employer or potential client about an idea and you're wanting to pitch to them, they may feel that you're not coming across with great clarity. On the other hand, you may feel that they are not being very clear about what they want, and that actually is not a very easy situation to deal with. It can't be denied at the end of this week, though, Gemini, one of astrology's finest links, when the two planets of fortune, Jupiter in your sign, links to Venus in your sister sign of Aquarius, sister air sign. That peaks on Saturday, just as we have the winter solstice. But we have to just be aware that Jupiter is retrograde, it is detrimented in your sign, and Venus, whilst it can be great for relationships and friendships in Aquarius, it's not so much about money there. I feel it's more about our higher values. So you could connect to someone who you have a real rapport with, but I don't necessarily think it's so much to do with having a flutter. But also this week, that particular potentially very positive link is moderated by Jupiter's square to Saturn. They're getting closer together. They're going to come into an exact square on the 24th of December, one of astrology's mightiest strategic influences. And that's very much about being mindful that whatever you would like to see come to pass, Jupiter in your sign, and wherever you're investing your optimism and great ideas, how it's perceived in the wider world may be much more of a different matter. That said, by Saturday and the winter solstice, we see the sun make its way into the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn for you is very much about transformation, and you've had oodles of it since 2008 because of Pluto. Now this year, Pluto is no longer there. So in a way, it gives you an opportunity to look back to 2008 and think about how your life has evolved, particularly around very close alliances, perhaps around how you've marshalled your financial resources. If you are someone who wants to do well with business, you have a great opportunity with this event, particularly with that potentially fortunate link between Venus and Jupiter reaching a peak on the same day. But also the 8th house energy can be about transformation. And if you've tried your absolute hardest around any kind of relationship, with a friend, with the family, in a business alliance, or romantically, and you just don't feel it's working out, that particular transition could see you think very carefully about what you want from your future. And the reason for that is that the winter solstice tangles with a T-square to the nodal axis, and the north node inverting to the end of the 11th house for you suggests that you might be uncompromising around certain associations and friendships in particular if you don't really feel that they've got a future. So some things could wither on the vine, but the converse is true. If the Sun and Mercury going through Sagittarius has helped you to get a much clearer understanding of who you can relate to and who is important to you, those alliances can get deeper as the weeks go on, right through to the spring equinox. So the 13 weeks from the end of this week could be a time of new people becoming more rooted in your life, people who you have a much closer affinity to, perhaps in a very psychological way somehow. So it's a week that definitely has some opportunities, but it's definitely a week that requires some care too. Have a great week, Gemini, and please do check out your year 2025 personal forecast and get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast. Cancer, your week commencing the 16th of December forecast could see you feeling a little world weary as you come into this week. For sure, Mercury going direct could help to clarify some details that may have been a little bit blurry, or if you've been waiting on an appointment, now you can hear about it. But it's because of the full moon has been in such a tender area, that part of you that can be so conscientious and take your responsibilities very seriously, if you feel that people have been loading more expectation upon you or not taking enough personal responsibility themselves, as the Sun meets in a square with Neptune right at the heart of this week, there could be part of you that really does crave for some personal space. But even if there has been some politics or those heavy demands, or your physical vitality has felt rather low, by the end of this week, two events can be truly reassuring. The angle between Jupiter in your 12th house and Venus in your 8th house suggests someone's going to surprise you by a thoughtful gesture. It may be that there's an appreciation for you outside of the people you're immediately thinking are challenging, but that appreciation is really heartfelt. It could come by way of a kindly text, a really nice gift or Christmas card, but someone really does recognize the commitment you've put in. But also with the winter solstice and the Sun moving into your opposite sign, although the 7th house is often seen to be very much about relating, I think it's also where we can put our boundary in. And so if you have felt drained, you have felt that you've given it everything and people just want more from you, it's an opportunity for you to say enough, particularly as it is in a right angle with the North Node, which is very, very much to do with your professional and worldly interactions. And since the middle of July 2023, that Chiron and also the eclipse series in Aries suggest there have been a lot of demands professionally, perhaps also some wonderful opportunities too. But that nodal axis is going to invert into the part of your chart to do with freedom on the 11th of January. So I feel some freedoms coming for you. It could be psychological, it could be physical, it could be that you're going to book some travel, it could be that you're going to take up some kind of new interest. But the winter solstice in your 7th house can see you set some boundaries, but also in a more personal context, if it has felt a bit blurry and you've not quite been sure who's for you and who isn't for you, you're soon going to find out by the end of this week. And please do check out your year 2025 personal forecast and get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast. So Leo, your week commencing the 16th of December forecast begins with the energy of last week's full moon, still very much to the fore. Full moons create a backdrop for the following 2 weeks, and because that happened right at the end of last week, it's still palpable. And for you, it was in your sector of connections, networks, friendships, but also your long-term plan. Now, Jupiter, the planet of opportunity, is also in that part of your chart, albeit in retrograde, and by the end of this week, forges an absolutely beautiful link to Venus, the planet of relating. But the key is, Leo, is that these two planets are known as the greater Jupiter and lesser Venus benefic. So in traditional astrology, they're all about good fortune. So that's something to really savour. But there is a deeper strand to this week, because as the full moon occurred, so Mercury, the planet of communication, went direct in your sector of more immediate sociability, how you express yourself, your charisma, but the area that's very much to do with romance. So if there have been some cross wires, those could be ironed out this week, but we need to be mindful the Sun continues along with Mercury in that area, but is challenged by Neptune right at the heart of this week. Now, Neptune is a beautiful influence, and it can be very uplifting in a spiritual dimension, but it can also create absolute confusion. And if you do feel that someone around you, be it in a romantic context or a friend, is a bit too clingy or draining, or tends to get a bit jealous if you want to do things with different people, that could be something that really sticks in your craw. And here's the thing, Jupiter actually squares 2 with Saturn, like Neptune in that 8th house. So this is going to be a week when you may seek to break free of someone who's holding you back from having that connection to your higher purpose. In fact, Jupiter and Saturn will reach the peak of their square next week, and that's one of astrology's mightiest structural influences, because Jupiter's go and Saturn can be no, just in very simple terms. So as much as we have got that divinely fortunate link between Jupiter and Venus at the end of this week, we have to be mindful Jupiter's retrograde. It's also in a sign where it's detrimented, and we're also dealing with the confusion that Neptune created on the back of that full moon. So if things are a bit murky about your future, I feel by the end of this week and the Sun's ingress into Capricorn with the winter solstice, your desire to grapple with the details of things is going to really increase. And also because that event squares up with the North Node in the part of your chart to do with personal freedom, suggests that if you do feel that someone's maybe a little bit inhibiting of what you want to get from your life long term, it could be somewhat of a crunch point. But it's also true that the 11th and 5th house energies can be extremely sociable, and hopefully Saturn and Neptune will not be providing such a challenging input into your personal situation. But one of the things with the sun moving into Capricorn, as it does each time this year, is it reminds you of what you've learned and all the commitment and sacrifices you've made since 2008 with Pluto in Capricorn. But if you really worked with Pluto and helped to evolve, the chances are, as you enter the festivities, that part of you that does like to make sure that everyone has a good time, you like to make sure that every need of theirs is met, but you also now know it's important for other people to pitch in and do their bit too, because if it all falls to you, that creates a sense of resentment. And this is where Venus can be very good for you in that link to Jupiter, because if you need to use a slice of diplomacy to get other people to pitch in to do their bit, the chances are that you can. Have a great week, Leo, and please do check out your year 2025 personal forecast and get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast. So Virgo, your week commencing the 16th of December forecast shows how astrology is never all one direction, because we get competing influences. The job of the astrologer is to weight the ones that have the most impact, the most power. And in your case, over the last couple of years, having Saturn in your 7th house has probably brought quite a lot of impact to your situation, because Saturn's very serious influence. It's not without its opportunities, but it's an influence we can soon feel. Whereas the full moon at the end of last week was in the part of your chart to do with goals, ambitions, success, which is where you have Jupiter, the planet of luck. But Jupiter has been in a retrograde. It doesn't mean to say you're going to be unlucky. It may have required some rethinking, and perhaps the full moon has seen you rethink some of your ideas about your work, because Mercury, your ruler, has been in retrograde in your 4th house, which came to an end on that full moon. So perhaps if there has been a little bit of a confusing scenario, maybe about the Christmas arrangements with family members, perhaps it's been more to do with where you live. Perhaps you've been waiting for a contractor to finish some work at home. Perhaps there's been something to do with working from home, as you might do. But these energies have been influenced by not just Saturn in your sector of relationships, but also Neptune. And Neptune continues to be dominant this week, and by the middle of the week could cause some issues. So if you are wanting to talk to a boss about time off over Christmas, however much you may feel that you're telling them exactly what you need and you thought it through from their viewpoint as well as yours, you may not get a firm answer, which could be frustrating. But also Saturn, in a more strategic way, is clashing with Jupiter. So in terms of the long-term plan for you, so not just this week, if you're not so happy at work, and maybe relationships is part of the issue, by the end of next week, you may need to address this theme quite seriously. But that said, Jupiter by the end of the week forges a fantastic link to Venus. And Venus is about money as well as relating, and it's in your sector of work. And therefore, you could have an appointment towards the end of this week, and you could have a connection with someone which is really uplifting. And that's what I mean about astrology. So there is some challenging stuff this week, the potential for confusion, but there could be a speeding up in terms of your thinking. And if things have been a bit stodgy and a bit uncertain around a personal issue, by the end of the week, I feel as we have the winter solstice, the sun moves into your 5th house, and that's going to give you a real sense of uplift in terms of your physical energy, but also your enthusiasm, and you'll start to get in the Christmas spirit in a more fulsome way, I feel. And also because Venus and Jupiter forge such a prestigious link on the same day, that could be when you really start to see your situation in a more positive way. So that's the story of this week. Opportunities, Virgo, perhaps some challenges too. And if you are in a relationship, particularly professionally, which you're not enjoying and it's not feeding your soul and you don't feel very comfortable with the people you work with, I feel really you're being encouraged over the festive period to get talking to different people, get lots of different ideas about how you can burst into the new year on the front foot and in top dynamic form. And please do check out your year 2025 personal forecast and get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast. So Libra, your week commencing the 16th of December forecast suggests, because Mercury is now direct, that everything is going to be absolutely crystal clear. Yeah? Well, perhaps not. Because the full moon, which occurred at the end of last week, was about your desire to travel, widen your world. Could have been to do with discussions, perhaps around a contract, or the aforementioned travel, but the blurry energy of Neptune was feeding into that and still does this week to the Sun. So by the heart of this week, as much as Mercury going direct might resolve some technological glitches that you may have experienced, or some cross wires with siblings or neighbours, in terms of managing your situation, things could still be a little elusive when it comes to getting everything working efficiently. You might also feel a bit drained right at the heart of this week, but there's no denying that Jupiter, the planet of opportunity, which is in that 9th house along with that full moon, does link with your ruler Venus in a beautiful way as this week draws to a close. And if there is someone that you're really drawn to or connecting with, that you just seem to have a fantastic rapport with, that can get closer as this week draws to a close. What could be more challenging, however, is that if you're trying to propose something that's new and fresh around your work, because although Jupiter might, despite its retrograde, still be giving you lots of ideas, it's challenged by Saturn, which peaks in the week following this one, is also tightening up. So you could feel that if you're in a situation professionally, for example, where there are a lot of demands, a lot of expectations, but you're seeing the ways in which things could be done better, if that philosophy or that idea is being blocked, that could lead to a lot of deep frustration. So by the end of this week, as the Sun makes the transition to your 4th house, which is the area very much to do with being protective, perhaps taking a pause, it's your chance to just take a breath and make sure that you feel really safe and at ease in whatever you're doing. Once that point is reached, that also clashes with the North Node, which for you is in your sector of relationships. So whether it is professionally or personally, despite that gorgeous link between Venus and Jupiter, and despite Mercury going direct, there are some other issues this week. However, the Winter Solstice and the Sun moving into Cancer is going to be interesting this year, because it's the first time when Pluto is not in residence. Pluto's moved along with Venus, of course, into your 5th house, which is much more outgoing, much more sociable, but all the lessons that Pluto taught you since 2008 were hard earned. And I feel as you come to the end of this week, if you do feel that you don't feel really appreciated, you're not feeling particularly at ease, whether it's around the family arrangements for Christmas, whether it is around your work, it's going to give you a lot of food for thought over the festive holidays. So when you get ready to prepare to come into the new year, I feel it is going to be from a very much stronger and more resilient viewpoint. So there can be some delightful opportunities this week, but there can be those expectations and draining energies too. But I feel over the next few weeks, you're going to think it all through and posture yourself ready to take on the new year in a very dynamic way. And please do check out your year 2025 personal forecast and get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast. So Scorpio, your week commencing the 16th of December forecast suggests that financial matters could be still at the front of your thinking, because the full moon at the end of last week certainly crystallized a need to get a balance between the ins and outs at what can be for many people an expensive time of the year. True, Mercury now going direct in your second house suggests that maybe some money that was owed to you has or will be about to come in, and that's really good. But because Neptune and Saturn are in the part of your situation that's to do with where you'd like to be generous, affectionate, but also where you could speculate, Neptune's continuing right angle to the Sun, which peaks on Wednesday, suggests if you're not too sure, if you are thinking about a business decision, an investment, some shares, a property matter, that you should proceed with caution despite Mercury having gone direct. Also, Saturn is forging a deep right angle to Jupiter, which is located in the same area as the full moon of last week, the 8th house. And to be honest, Jupiter is in retrograde. And by June the 9th next year, you could have a big breakthrough. I must reassure you of that. But through to the 3rd of February next year, Jupiter's retrograde is something to be mindful of. And through to the middle of January, it is going to be in conflict with Saturn. And Saturn can, of course, be about restraint, limitations. And those two come into an exact square next week, repeating the 90-degree angle of August. So even though the full moon is done, even though Mercury is going direct, even though Jupiter forges a great link with Venus at the end of this week, which could bring a slice of fortune, I still feel that if you are wanting to be very generous, quite understandably to loved ones, the planets are really saying to you, do proceed with a little bit of caution. Neptune brings confusion and Saturn brings the potential for limitation. However, by the end of this week, the Sun moves into your 3rd house. 3rd house energy is bright, quick, sharp, fast, and it's perfect for you to enter into the festivities on the back of. If you've often noticed that things do speed up from the middle part of December each year, it wouldn't be a surprise, because the Sun always returns to Capricorn with the Winter Solstice. And of course, water, your sign, and Earth, Capricorn, are very conducive to one another. Earth carries water, so your emotion works with the practicality of the sign of Capricorn, and you can be such a shrewd person when it comes to marshalling resources, but I just feel that your mind will get a lot clearer as this week draws to a close. And because of Venus in your 4th house, which is very much to do with emotion, links with Jupiter, maybe you're going to connect to someone in a deeper, more heartfelt way. It might not just be a flirty encounter, a clinch under the mistletoe. It could be something much more meaningful to you, and it actually could be very heartwarming. But then the pace of life is really going to pick up. But when it comes to marshalling the ins and outs of your finances, I think this week still requires a degree of care, and certainly apply your usual shrewdness and due diligence. And please do check out your year 2025 personal forecast and get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast. So Sagittarius, your week commencing the 16th of December forecast begins with your ruler Jupiter very much to the fore. Now Jupiter's in retrograde. It won't go direct until the 3rd of February. That doesn't mean to say that everything won't work out, but we need to be mindful that Jupiter in Gemini is detrimented. Jupiter in Gemini can be great for being enthusiastic about the things that inspire us, and for you that would be relationships. But because the square to Saturn, which occurred on the 12th of August, is going to be repeated next week, the two are closing together as this week goes on. So that suggests that when it comes to a relationship, there could be some positive possibilities, but we need to be mindful of how it feels for you, and if there are any inhibiting energies around your personal situation in terms of kids, where you live, all those kind of things may, with the best will in the world, just stop you having the connection that you would like. But that doesn't mean to say it's impossible. And later in the week, on Saturday, Venus, the planet of relating, in the part of your situation to do with fast moving communication, forges a gorgeous link with Jupiter, one of astrology's most lucky alliances. But at the heart of this week, the potential for confusion is amped up because the Sun in your sign, rather like Jupiter in your opposite sign, is square Neptune, like Saturn, in your sector of emotion. So I think things can be a little blurry this week when it comes to relationships. And of course, this is all following on from the full moon in your opposite sign. And if you think back to when the new moon occurred in Gemini on the 6th of June, that may have been when you really set your intentions around a relationship hope, but the reality of how things are just may be a little hard to fathom because Neptune distorts, Saturn limits. However, as the week draws to a close, with Mercury gaining pace in your sign, and that link, now it's come out of its retrograde, and that link between your ruler, Jupiter, and Venus could see a sparkling conversation. So despite the fact that there can be some inhibitions, there can be some misunderstandings, cross wires, despite Mercury going direct, by the end of the week, as the Sun makes its way from your sign into the sign of Capricorn, I feel there could be some kind of breakthrough. And that breakthrough could very well be even financial, because whatever you have been working on over the last month, whether it's a creative project, whether it's your self-worth and personal identity, the fact that the winter solstice ushers in the Sun's move into Capricorn, that's very much where you can gauge and measure your progress. It's just that this particular year's winter solstice, ushering in Cardinal Quadrant 4, the last 13-week slot of each astrological year, is in a square with the North Node, which for you is in the exuberant sign of Aries. So that's very much about being playful, sociable, interactive, but that has to work in terms of your values, but also in terms of your finance. So this is a week that from the cloud and from the confusion, something very positive could emerge. It could emerge earlier in the week as well, but particularly if you're really in touch with how you feel about things, and if your emotional and family life is really clear, or you're not encountering any practical problems around a property matter, by the end of this week, you're going to be in a better space to enjoy yourself. And please do check out your year 2025 personal forecast and get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast. So Capricorn, your week commencing the 16th of December forecast begins with Mercury travelling forwards, but still located in a very tender area of your chart. The full moon at the end of the week saw you perhaps becoming more conscious of how you need to balance your psychological, emotional and spiritual needs against the practical demands upon you. And Neptune in your third house, very much to do with your ideas, which has seen you inspired since 2008, is squaring up with the Sun right at the heart of this week. So despite Mercury, the planet of communication, going direct, there could still be some blurry conversations you have where you're not quite sure where you stand or how people feel about you, which could drain your spirits to a degree. Also, your ruler, Saturn, is in an increasing right angle with Jupiter, the planet of opportunity. Now that's going to peak next week, but it's suggesting that care is really needed around all sorts of conversations. That said, by Saturday, as the sun returns to your sign and we have the winter solstice, that really is going to revive your spirits, but also your physical energy too. But there is a little bit of a gotcha to that, in that the winter solstice this year is going to be T-squaring the nodal axis, and the north node, coming to the end of its journey in your fourth house, has over the last 18 months really been urging you to get your home and feelings part of your world working as good as possible. That's where also there's been Chiron and also the eclipses in Aries. And once the North Node inverts into Pisces on the 11th of January, you're going to have Venus go there on the 3rd of January, you're going to find that things will start to get more fluid in the way that you communicate. But I feel that as much as you will get an uplift in your physical vitality at the end of this week, there could still be some sensitive issues around where you live, who you live with and how, and perhaps your professional interactions. So that clash between the Sun and Neptune in the middle of this week also suggests be cautious about who you share private information with. Someone could take a snippet that you share with them, and before you know it, it could be common knowledge. So a time to be a little safety first, but I think by the end of this week you are going to see yourself gaining more traction, more enthusiasm, moving back into your own power after what has been a very tender part of the year. But in terms of finance, there is a delicious link between Venus and Jupiter as this week draws to a close. So despite the fact that Saturn's asking to be cautious about what you pledge and it's square with Jupiter, Jupiter's link to Venus on Saturday with the winter solstice could give you some kind of financial breakthrough which can absolutely delight you. And please do check out your year 2025 personal forecast and get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast. So Aquarius, your week commencing the 16th of December forecast sees Mercury travelling forwards in your sector of friendships and social interactions and your network. If there had been some miscues around that area, or things hadn't been moving quite as quickly as you would like about a future plan, the chances are you should be feeling more optimistic. But the full moon, which occurred at the end of last week, just as Mercury went direct, was a very complex one, because in a way that was giving you some choices, and perhaps socially, perhaps romantically, but the energy of Neptune applied to that, and Neptune can distort, it can also enchant us, mystify us, but at the heart of this week it does square with the position of the Sun exactly. So if you are thinking about a financial situation, it's probably important to make sure you scrutinize information to the nth degree. And the irony is that Jupiter, the planet of enterprise, is in the same part of your chart as the full moon occurred, which can be about speculation, but that is squared by your traditional ruler of Saturn. So as much as Neptune squaring to the Sun can see you trip the light fantastic and espouse that more idealistic part of your nature, your ruler in a way is protecting you even with one of astrology's most challenging influences, which actually peaks next week. And there's a triple irony, if you like, because by the end of this week, Jupiter forges a perfect link to Venus in your sign. But I don't feel the good fortune that can come from the two planets of luck in such a good alliance. I don't feel it's going to be so much financial for you. I feel it's possible it could you could enjoy some a stroke of fortune, but I think it's going to be more about who you connect with, who really you enjoy being with, because they're both in air signs. a wonderful exchange can occur at the end of this week, which could be really heart-rending for you. But by the end of the week, not only do we have that trine between Venus and Jupiter, we have the winter solstice. And the winter solstice is in your 12th house. And the 12th house is where we can need to just retreat, rest, recuperate. It can also be where our physical vitality drops a little bit. Now, because this occurs every year, with the winter solstice and the sun moving into Capricorn, for Aquarius people, it's something you're probably used to. There's part of you that can perhaps just want to step back a little bit. And most Aquarius people have a real mix between being very sociable, but also needing some personal space and time to regenerate emotionally. And it's that part of you that is going to come to the fore as the week draws to a close. So even if people wanting to be very inclusive, get you to join in, your popularity can be at a high with Venus in your own sign. There may be part of you, particularly with the winter solstice T-squaring the north node and the south node, that just wants to share with them politely that you need a little bit of space. But because Venus is still in your sign, I feel that those invitations could still come, or if there is someone you're drawn to, that isn't necessarily going to just stop. It may be that you just want to spend some quieter time with them, or if it's someone completely new, maybe even get to know them in an absolutely confidential way. So, when it comes to being more speculative, Saturn, your ruler, applies a brake to Jupiter's exuberance, but it can be good for you. Neptune squares to the Sun in your sector of friendship, but your long-term plan, suggesting if you do get together with people, the chances are you're going to enjoy the festive spirit and also the goodies on offer to the maximum, even if you might regret it the next day. But seriously, that's asking you to try not to be too idealistic about future plans that involve money. By the end of the week, however, a personal connection to someone can be very, very sweet indeed. Have a great week, Aquarius. All the best and goodbye. And please do check out your year 2025 personal forecast and get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast. So Pisces, your week commencing the 16th of December forecast suggests that when it comes to your work-life balance, that may have been somewhat challenging of late. And you may have also felt rather sensitive about both areas. Mercury going direct now could speed things up if you're applying for a job or you're networking professionally, but equally it can help if there have been some cross wires with colleagues. But the Sun, continuing in that area, asking you to take your ambitions seriously, is conflicted by your ruler Neptune right at the heart of this week. You could feel a bit confused as what to do, to be honest. Also, your traditional ruler Jupiter is squaring up to Saturn in your sign, which reaches a peak next week. And that is one that can see you feel a bit closed in. Saturn over the last couple of years may have diminished a degree of your energy. Jupiter in retrograde in the 4th house, which is where the full moon was. It is very, very good for understanding more about what makes us tick, or developing your home, or moving to somewhere that fits your needs more acutely. But of course Jupiter is about growth and Saturn can be more about limitation, so something may feel a little stuck there as well. However, Jupiter does forge quite the link with Venus by the end of this week, and in traditional astrology Jupiter and Venus are the two planets of fortune. It's possible, Pisces, that you have a secret admirer, and it could be someone that you already know. Now, I don't say this lightly because language is very powerful, but Jupiter's in the 4th house of home and family. That's where the full moon was, whereas Venus is in the most sheltered part of your scope, the 12th house. Or it could be that you find yourself feeling very nostalgic about someone from your past, perhaps someone you got very close to, perhaps someone who was in your family who's no longer with us. So there could be a real palpable and poignant feel to the end of the week as those two align, but then the winter solstice on Saturday gives you a chance to break out of this quite delicate part of the year where I feel there has been quite a lot of demands upon you in terms of your worldly connection, and that has fed into how you feel emotionally. And just Saturn and Neptune in your sign has not necessarily been easy. But by the end of the week, the Sun climbing into the 11th house, that's much more social. It's also much more to do with networking. It's much more to do with interacting. It also forges a T-square with the North Node. If you do get together with friends towards the end of this week, or go out with a group of colleagues, you may well want to make merry with that particular square. But also remember the North Node is going to inverse into your sign on the 11th of January, the true North Node. And that gives you an opportunity to really set your sights on what's right for you, the individual. And because you're still going to have Saturn and Neptune with you, in Saturn's case, it's going to be with you for 9 months of the year. In Neptune's case, for just over 4 months of 2025. And they're still going to be encouraging you to get what you need as an individual, along with the eclipse series that's going to be working its way through your sign. So there's a lot for you to go for, and if one of the areas that hasn't been working for you of late, and you just feel that whatever occurs this week with Mercury direct and the Sun going into your 11th house, you still don't feel really that settled, just be aware that you're going to have an opportunity to take a much firmer grip on your life direction, the tiller of your life direction, as you make your way into the new year. And the good news will begin from the 3rd of January with the gorgeous Venus pitching up in your sign. Have a great week, Pisces. Take care and goodbye for now. And please do check out your year 2025 personal forecast and get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecasts.